Economy. Let's bring in CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Liesman. So another rate hike and maybe another to come, Steve?
Yeah, at least one and maybe more. Powell and the Fed hike rates by 75 basis points, 3/4 of a percentage point. Yesterday it was the fourth time. We haven't seen these kind of rate hikes since the early 1980s with Paul Volcker and the double-digit inflation we had back then. But I don't think it's over yet. They're looking at maybe another half a point in December, going all the way up. Right now, they're sort of kissing 4%. They may be closer to 5% by the summer next year.
Yeah, Steve, there was a hope that there would be a smooth landing. But it sounds like the Fed chairman is giving up on that fact. And I'm curious what your thoughts are. We're fascinated. I'm fascinated by this because, you know, people like Ratner and myself on this show have been warning about runaway spending for 15 years now, and that at some point it would catch up to us. Do you think, even with interest rates going up, that inflation is going to remain stubbornly high because we now have a national debt over $30 trillion?
I think inflation is going to come down from the current levels. Whether or not it gets down to the Fed's 2% target is another question. And, Joe, I think you raise an interesting point, which is what is the responsibility of the fiscal side on this? You open any macroeconomic textbook 101, and the fiscal side does play a role in it. If you do a high deficit spending, look, it was okay in a world when we had low inflation, didn't have an inflation problem. But certainly right now, the fiscal side, the White House and Congress could be playing a role in helping bring down inflation, and they've done something, I guess, down the road when it comes to that Inflation Reduction Act. But none of that is now an immediate. If they were to play a stronger role right now, maybe you'd get more impact on inflation. On the soft landing idea, the runway was big, and now it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Powell hasn't ruled it out yet. Yeah. But it's going to be a tough landing right now to make it soft.
So, Steve, when you're talking at home and your friends say, hey, Steve, really, what's going on? How bad's it going to be? What do you tell them? How bad's it going to be? What do you think? What's next year going to look like? Are we going to have a really bad recession?
You know, Joe, I kind of, to the extent that I still have friends and they talk to me about the economy. That's
listen, I feel your pain, baby.
He's jealous.
I sort of remain a little bit optimistic here. I think there's some stuff going on that is not classic when it comes to what's happening with the economy. We still have this enormous demand for labor right now. We still have this historic unemployment rate. So I would think that a really good outcome would be is if we only raise the unemployment rate by a percentage point from 3.5% to 4.5%. I think we could still get away with a very mild slowdown or a very mild recession. By now, of course, you've gone on to look for additional hors d'oeuvres in the party that we're at right now, because I've bored you. But I do think we can get out of this, you know, and this discussion versus the pigs in a blanket, Joe, I know is complicated.
Can I have two more of those?
Got to go this way.
Oh.
I'm sorry. So nice to see you.
No, Steve. Actually, I actually agree with you. And let me just say, if we can keep unemployment rates to 4.5%, let's say, that's historically low. That would be a somewhat smoother landing than a lot of people are fearing now. CNBC Steve Liesman, please.
We got to go over here. So
please, Steve, please come back.
Get a drink. Get her a drink.
I need to get and he needs to come with me. So
all right.
Steve Liesman, thank you.
It's great having Steve. I want Steve back. Steve. I love Steve.
He's more optimistic than you thought.
He's a tad bit.
Because you're basically what you're trying to get him to say is what some of us keep hearing from some of our friends in the economics world and then banking is up. People take you aside and go, man, next year's going to be the apocalypse. It's going to be the worst recession ever. And on the other side, there are people like Steve who make an argument that, you know, it's not going to be great, but the employment situation is so good that it's not the thing you normally have on the brink of a big recession.
And this economy has been stubbornly resilient.
And weird.
Yeah, and weird.
All right, John Hellman, thank you for
Talk about
just
weird.
showing up at the party
Talk about weird.
uninvited.
Exactly.
Okay.